Download the AllStar app. Make your picks for UFC fights, challenge your friends, level up and win prizes. Link in description. Get it now. Chael Sonnen. It's like Chael Sonnen makes videos and like the news just writes so many things about it. That's how I found out because I've never ever watched a Chael Sonnen show.
Yeah, I've never watched a Chael Sonnen.
Yeah.
But only reason I know that he's saying anything is because the news, right?
Right.
The news like puts a spotlight on it. So his recent rant was about fighters returning to the UFC, and you know Nate Diaz. He recently beat Jorge Masvidal in a boxing match, and then after that he mentioned that he wants to go back to the UFC and win the title. And Chael's talking about like he's comparing like if Nate Diaz came back to if Ronda Rousey came back, right? Nate, you gotta understand, Nate Diaz, I think he's like 39 now.
Yeah.
That's crazy to think that
That
Nate
is
Diaz
crazy.
is 39 because he still acts like he's 22.
Yeah, he does not look 39.
Yeah, he doesn't
in the-
look
act it.
39 and act like that either, which is like kind of the image that he has created for himself.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Right.
But Chael was saying that, you know, Nate Diaz, he would definitely be coming back to the UFC, and people will love him to be back in the UFC, and the UFC would love to have him back as well.
Yeah, he moves the needle on
He
views
definitely
and
moves
stuff.
the needle, and he was saying he was basically saying he needs to come back and fight Dustin Poirier.
Which
in the
would be a
return.
cool.
That would be dope.
That's a cool retirement fight for Dustin too. If
Yeah.
he only wants one more fight, that's a good one.
And they were lined up to fight before,
Right.
And then you know they had some beef, or they were
Oh.
talking shit back and forth. I don't know exactly what, but the matchup fizzled,
Mm.
and I'm pretty sure Dustin Poirier is still kind of, you know, mad about that. And Nate, he's just down to fight whoever's down to fight
Yeah.
for the right amount of money.
And hey, you get two former BMF challengers fighting each other.
Exactly, for maybe a BMF.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Who
a
knows,
very
right?
sellable fight.
And you could sell it for at 170.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a good weight class. I think Dustin would be able to fight at 170 as well.
Yeah.
I don't think Nate's going to be cutting down to 155.
Ooh.
I doubt that happens.
Yeah, doubtful.
But why is Nate, if you could sell it to me, why is Nate someone that the UFC would bring back? Why? Like, because he's not a high level fighter anymore.
Right. I think
Yeah.
it's the character appeal. Like
I was gonna say.
you get the entertainment of he's like good enough to watch like just purely at that value, but then the character that he's got going on.
I was gonna say legacy, attitude, and character.
Right. It's like, you know, it's like showing up to the, what's it called? Like the open workout, and all you do is like light up a joint and smoke it. It's like, oh, that's different. And that's
Yeah.
unique, right? So like,
I mean, or even just like in a lot of fans' minds, they still remember him slapping Leon Edwards and then like pointing at him. You know what I mean?
Stockton slap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's just sort of the legacy as well as the attitude. The
Right.
fact that he beat McGregor, the fact that, you know.
Yeah, it's compounded by so many different things.
Yeah.
But him beating McGregor, yes, of
Yeah.
course, obviously, like
He was around forever, and yet his name really became synonymous with the UFC after that.
yeah, because he was always in the shadow of his
of
brother.
Nick,
Yeah.
And then Nick, like he got suspended by the the commission. He never came back. It was just like a fine that he had to pay, but it was for weed. So like there was a big issue on that.
Right.
And then like during that time, Nate Diaz just kept chipping away, and got the opportunity to fight Conor and then beat him, right?
Yeah.
Which it altered the course of his career.
Right.
Just now he is the Diaz brother.
Yeah.
He is the one. Like Nick Diaz was.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just like it's crazy how like their careers
Yeah.
have like reversed,
Yeah.
right? Because it was Nick that was on the rise, and Nate was just kind of like the journeyman.
Yep.
And then once Nick got suspended
It just
after I
flipped.
think it was after the Anderson Silva fight. Yeah, it just like he disappeared.
Yeah.
It just became a mystery. Like, what's he doing, right?
Right,
And then Nate
right.
was just continually chipping, fighting, and then got the opportunity, right? And hey, man, I'm happy that Nate got the opportunity and did what he did. The reason why is because I think he's a better personality than Nick Diaz. Like he's a better personality. Like even without all the hype and stuff, right?
Right,
Even
right.
without the Conor McGregor,
Yeah.
fight, he was still like a better, like promoter of himself.
Yeah.
than
Yeah,
Diaz
yeah,
was.
yeah, for sure.
Right.
There was more. They're both controversial, right? But there was more like serious controversy with Nick.
Yeah,
versus Nate was more like a fun controversy.
Yeah, you
if that
could
makes sense.
sensationalize some like entertaining headlines out of Nate more so than Nick,
Yeah.
just based on what comes out of his mouth.
Yeah, and then he compares like her or him to Ronda Rousey, right? And why Ronda Rousey wouldn't be able to like come back and be welcome as Nate Diaz. And he talks about money and UFC contracts, right? Because
Right.
Ronda Rousey at the time, she was a massive star, right?
Yeah.
And she was getting she was probably getting paid more than any female, even to this point, probably. Who
Right.
knows, right?
Right,
Like
right.
the level of like, revenue she was bringing in for the UFC was amazing, right?
Yeah.
So like, imagine if Ronda Rousey comes back, who's she gonna fight? Like, she can't build herself back up.
Right.
She would have to fight like a Misha Tate.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Misha Tate's been training the whole time, competing. Like, that would be a great fight for Misha Tate if she came back,
Absolutely.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I would pick Misha Tate to win that
Right.
because, like, yeah, Ronda Rousey has the armbar, but like, what has she been doing? Like, she's been doing pro wrestling.
Yeah, WWE.
And probably been
stuff.
training, but she looks a lot bigger than she ever was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, and then you gotta justify paying her that much,
Right.
Yeah.
right? Could you do that? Like, she would have to be on pay-per-view. She would have to be maybe a main event for a pay-per-view. Could you sell that? Like,
Yeah.
if she comes back, right?
And
Right.
and there's a whole generation of people that know of her but never watched her fight. You know what
Some
I mean?
of them don't even know who she is.
Yeah,
They just
probably.
think she's like a pro wrestler, like
Right.
on
Yeah, could you-
WWE.
Yeah, I can't imagine that just because we've all been fans of the sport for so long, but there definitely are people that look at it and they're like, Ronda who?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. True.
Yeah, Ronda. Yeah, but she doesn't seem like she wants to come back for a multitude of
She
reasons.
made comment that she felt like the fan backlash to her losing those, 2 fights was too much for her even, and she just felt like, oh, okay, so my fans actually don't care about me kind of thing. She didn't felt taken care of and that stuff. I remember reading an interview pretty recently about that.
Well, it's the truth though.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, think about it happens now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people are so back and forth
Yeah,
about their opinions.
very back and forth. Like, they're just riding the wave
Yeah.
of positivity or negativity.
Yeah.
It doesn't, because at the end of the day, you're just some random person at home,
Right.
just typing some stuff, and you just
Yeah.
think it's cheeky and fun and all that shit,
Right.
and you just post shit online, right?
Yeah, I've had friends who watch like MMA or other combat sports where they'll be like, this guy could be like a multiple time like world champ or title holder or something. The moment they lose, it's like, crap, I think he's slipping and I think he's done. Comes back, wins the title, is like, oh, he still got it, right? And then it's like, well, what were you saying like 6 months ago, a year ago?
Yeah.
So the opinion just goes up and down so quickly, and
Well,
people don't give it too much thought.
Well, it's like one of those things where it's like, oh, this person's the greatest of all time, and then they lose once or twice in a row, and they're like, they lost it. They need to retire, and it's
Right.
like, whoa, like, let's see, like,
Yeah,
like,
those are two very
yeah.
There's-
Well,
extreme.
that's what they do though. That's
Yeah.
what people do. Even like, people that are in the media, they do it too.
Yeah.
Right. They, there's like certain terminology that has been created in fighting. I don't know if it was like in boxing or any other sport, but in MMA, you got some terminology like fraud check.
Yeah.
I've never heard that
Huh.
until like MMA, I think.
Yeah. No,
Like in the
I
UFC.
only started hearing it recently even.
right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard that one before.
You
Fraud
never heard
check?
fraud check? Oh, it's all over. Like, that's what people say whenever like a guy that's like undefeated or like they get their first test of like a top 15 and they lose. They're like, oh, fraud check. Like they're a fraud.
They were
I
saying
see.
that about Saint Denis.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Saint Denis got fraud checked. I'm like,
He's
yo,
fighting
he
Poirier.
fought Poirier. What are you talking about?
Dude's a beast.
Yeah, like it's like
But
this-
that's the type of terminology that gets thrown around now, and this one fraud check is something that has been created. I think I wonder who created that. I would like to know the what is it called, the etymology.
yeah, the etymology,
The
of
etymology
like
of the phrase fraud
oh,
check.
man.
But
Yeah.
there's other phrases, right?
It's
that people
catchy.
use.
Yeah.
It's very catchy, right? It's very something.
Yeah.
It's something you can use like instantly.
Yeah.
Right. You kind of get the idea of what it's
Yeah.
supposed to mean. Yeah.
But
Huh.
it's ridiculous.
Yes, it
Like
is.
putting that on certain people's names.
Right.
And especially like guys that are getting their first like test in the top 15. Like,
Yeah.
yes, the possibility is you might lose.
Man, the possibility of any fight is you might lose, right? It doesn't even matter really. Like, I remember I saw a meme that was like this year's fraud checks or something, and it was like that, you know, the Heaven's Gate thing, and then it was like all these fighters that like lost because it was their first time fighting a top 15 or something, and I'm like, yo, man, they made it to the UFC. Whoever made that meme was definitely not in the UFC,
They're
right?
an asshole.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, come on, man.
You're a complete asshole. You talk about this dude lost for the first time.
Yeah.
Just beat everybody else up to that point, and
Right.
you're like, now they're a fraud. That doesn't make any sense. Then
Right.
what about fraud checks in basketball or football or soccer or whatever, right?
Right.
Or does that even exist? No, it doesn't. Because how do you fraud check in basketball? Like, doesn't make any sense. Right.
Right.
If you make it to the NBA, you're in the NBA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you're elite, right? Just like UFC. But the thing is, like, fraud check is there. Also, another one that gets loosely thrown around as well is like legend. Like, oh, this person's a legend. This person's a legend. Like, how many legends can there be?
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
dude, the sport only been alive for like 30 something years now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, how many legends can you throw around, right? Like, oh, this person's a legend, this person's a legend. But that word has been like majorly convoluted, right? I think like
Yeah.
people don't really know what a legend is,
Yeah.
Right.
right? There's like legends, and there's like the all-time greats, and there's the goats, and then like, there's all
Yeah.
these phrases, right? Terminologies that get thrown around all the time.
Yeah.
And with that, there's also the negative ones like fraud check
Right.
or weight bully.
Oh, yeah, weight bully.
Weight
Weight bully.
right?
Yeah,
That's another one. There's a couple. Like I can't think of them right now.
I remember them calling Sterling a weight bully, and they were bringing it up that they were calling him a weight bully, but then Sugar Sean, like, it's like he weighed in like the same or whatever, like day of the fight. And so they're like, how is he a weight bully? Like there was like a whole like thing breaking down how Sterling isn't a weight bully for
Right.
you know,
True.
Bantam.
O'Malley could be a weight bully, to be honest.
He's big.
He seems
man.
like he's bigger than everybody.
Yeah. He's
Like-
got the reach of a bigger
Yeah.
dude, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Just built different.
Yeah.
But yeah, like these are dumb like terminologies, and I understand why Ronda Rousey's not gonna come back, man. I understand her
Right.
perspective.
Yeah.
Like dude, imagine like you did so much for a sport,
Right.
Yeah.
and then the people that
Don't
you
appreciate
did
it.
for you,
Right.
Yeah.
You did it for, they don't appreciate it. They just overlook everything just because of the last couple of performances.
Right.
It's like you losing, like let's say you played like 10 seasons for like basketball seasons, right? In the first 8 seasons you went to the playoffs, you did really well. Maybe you never really won a title or championship, but you
Right.
did really well. And then the last 2 seasons your team was shit.
Yeah.
And then people only remember the last 2 seasons.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you came out on like a god awful performance where like you're just throwing air balls and stuff like that in the last one, and then they'll remember that one.
But
then
if you
it's
think
just
about
like-
it, there's a generation of MMA fans that have never seen Tony Ferguson in his El Kukui stage, right? They only know him as this guy on this terrible losing streak.
Yeah.
And like you hear, like you go in the comment section and you see like, of course you see people being like, oh, Tony, like this breaks my heart. Like, but then you also see the guys that are like, why is he even still fighting and stuff? And you're just like, I agree, like, but don't like play down. Like he was amazing in his heyday, prime Ferguson was unstoppable.
Yeah. Certified badass.
Yeah.
People forget though. And it was all because of that cord. He tripped over that cord
I know.
and hurt his knee.
One chord.
And that
And it
Habib
changed
fight never
MMA
happened.
history.
Imagine if he went on to beat Habib.
Yeah.
Like you would never, Habib would just not be who he is
True.
now, right? The
Yeah.
legacy, like El Kukui would be the
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though if he would have lost the rest of the fights that he had, he still beat Habib.
Yeah,
Exactly.
there's some alternate timeline where he's the one that walks into the sunset, just like perfect.
Yeah, exactly the alternate timeline where Tony Ferguson beats Habib and wins the title, and because he just had the style that would give him trouble. Like that's what everybody thought, right? That was the whole narrative.
That was
like,
the whole narrative.
He has a style that's gonna get, and he doesn't get tired and blah 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 and all this stuff.
Right.
But you know,
It was the Wing Chun dummy the whole
Exactly.
time.
Yeah, and you probably would get analysts just looking at his training methods, trying to make sense of it. And, oh my gosh.
yeah, man, go back and watch the run El Kukui went on. Don't erase all, because he's old now. Like El Kukui, what is he, like in his late 30s now?
Yeah.
Erase all the recent fights. Just go back and watch, and just look at the names.
Wasn't that like a 12? It was 12 fights, right?
Something
It was
crazy,
like 12 fight win streak, and it was like Anthony Pettis and just like all these badasses that he's like beating and just looking creative. Not even just like looking like, like unstoppable and like just like creativity.
throwing sand in the ring, like picked up sand inside the cage and threw it at Justin Gaethje, like stuff like that. Like,
Oh my
that's
God.
the El Kukui, right?
Yeah.
That we don't understand really, but we love it.
Who was
because
it?
was
What a
different.
Was it
character.
RDA that he threw like a spinning back elbow and missed, and RDA kind of made fun of it kind of with facial expression. And then he threw it again later in the fight and landed it bad. And when RDA was rocked, he was like, yeah, like just that kind of shit, man. Like,
Well, the thing is, like, even if you go back and look at it, like even like if you started watching the sport recently or just the UFC recently, then you probably wouldn't even recognize the names he beat,
yeah,
because those are guys from a different generation.
Right. True.
Right. So it's just, there's so many things, man. It's all perspective, but yeah, man, you gotta give respect to a lot of these fighters, and they don't want to come back, man. I understand why they don't want to come back. 'Cause
Right.
the shittiness of this industry, it's real shitty, like knee deep, full of shit.
man. When I was in Vegas and being around some of the higher profile fighters and stuff, people are ruthless the way that they speak to fighters, and you really realize that. I think a lot of fans almost like consider fighters to be like public property, so they just think that they can just say whatever they want, and it doesn't matter like how that person feels and stuff. And it's I don't know, man. I can't imagine writing some nasty shit and everything, or like being like, well, I lost money on you, and you're like, you're the one that bet the money on me.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, there were betting odds there, and you took them. It's like,
yeah.
come on.
He has nothing to do with like you putting your money on something.
Yeah,
Right.
you showed faith.
Nobody's-
I'm sorry I let you down.
Nobody forced you to do shit.
Yeah.
Right. I did not get on a phone call with you to tell you to put money on me. Like that was all you.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Idiots. Straight up idiots. But